Okay, I heard the recording. We are live on Zoom too. Okay. So I'm gonna call to order the Public Service Committee, the Monday, December 16th, 2024 meeting. Again, can you denote roll call? We have a full committee. Recital of the Pledge of Allegiance. Bill, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. Item number 4, approval of the minutes. We had 1 minute in front of us, 11/18/2024. Is there a motion or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Bill. Is there a second? Seconded by Dawn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 5 is public comment. And hopefully you noted there is approximately a 3-minute guideline or a goal to having your discussions done by then. I have 4 people registered, and I'll just list them in order. Rebecca Witherspoon, Morgan Lowry, Teep, and Chris Kammer, all registered to discuss. And is there any online? I see, is there just 4 people online? Oh. Okay. So if you're online and wishing to speak, please maybe raise your hand and we'll unmute you at that time.
Michael Conant is part of the presentation from Brenda later, so he'll be speaking, but not during the public appearance part.
Okay, it looks like Johnny Johnson, you're wishing to speak under the public comment? Okay, so you will be number 5 then. And on to Rebecca. Do you come up to the table, please? And you're a good one to start. You know, you have to unmute, and we got approximately 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Witherspoon, 639 Constitution Lane. As a resident of Forest and as a trustee on the village board, I was very interested when the topic of fluoride came up on the village board agenda last month, as I have been concerned about this issue for quite some time. Having done my own research on the potential hazards, I listened to the presentation made by the Dane County Public Health, including Dental Director Russell Dunkel, Johnny Johnson of the American Fluoridation Society, and Renesha Storzier of Dane County Public Health. I was concerned by a number of statements made by Mr. Johnson, which appeared to dismiss known risks and did not seem to be based on the current science and recent court decisions. So I reached out to the Dane County Public Health to ask if they stood by his statements, since he was part of their presentation and was often deferred to by Ms. Storzier. I was disappointed when they declined to answer this question. I then reached out to the Wisconsin Environmental Health Network and a Dr. Beth Neary, a pediatrician, and Dr. Davidson, an OBGYN, reviewed his entire statements made during the village board meeting in November. I'm still awaiting a full report from them, but initially they have informed me, and I quote, Dr. Johnson made many misstatements. He misquoted Christine Till. He stated that no child ever died from fluoride. There was a 3-year-old who did die. He said something about no harm to bottle-fed babies, but he can't make that statement based upon the science. And he is refusing to acknowledge multiple studies that have documented the neurotoxicity of fluoride. Dr. Neary has indicated that she and Dr. Davidson will be writing a full statement shortly after the holidays. I anticipate receiving this before the village board meeting in January, when the board will be considering this again. Once I receive that statement, I will share it with our village administrator, Bill Chang, who can then share it with the rest of the board. I thought this was important information that this committee should at least be aware of as you discuss this important issue this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Morgan Laurie, if you could come to the table. I guess I probably should have done this with Rebecca. Could you please state your name and address, please?
Sure.
We'll start the 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm Morgan Lowry, 609 Greenfield Drive, DeForest, Wisconsin. So my background's in engineering. I often get hired to evaluate data, process it, and make a recommendation based on that. For the fluoride in the water, I have not done my own research. That's not my field of expertise, right? So one of the things that I always perk up with is when people do their own research that are not in the field that they're doing their research in. Most of the data in the studies that you see there are not really designed and they're not presented in a way that's for somebody who's not experienced in that field to interpret. So generally what we do is we hire experts in those fields to make recommendations for that, because you can find any data that you want to see, particularly when we're looking at large population sets of data that are for things that are not easy to test, right? So particularly with fluoride in water, we have pretty large groups and the public health officials who are the experts in those fields are looking at and assessing that data based on not only just an individual's risks, but the risk as a population and the population's health as a whole. So my only thing that I wanted to bring forward is to, when we're evaluating these things, to lean on professionals that we have, and we have professionals at the county level, we have state and then the federal level, based on what their recommendations are in fluoride in our water for our treatment, the levels that they should be done at. Similar, they make recommendations on chlorine in water, right? And any of the chemicals that we add, we have limits on the different materials in there. So as you guys go through and you look through, I'd lean towards what those recommendations are for the officials and what their official opinions are. So, thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Dr. Patrick Heap. Again, please state your name and address for the record, and then we'll start the 3 minutes.
Certainly. Is this on? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. My name is Dr. Patrick Teep. I'm a general dentist. I've practiced for almost 31 years, 30 of that years in private practice in a few different spots around Wisconsin. Most recently for 24 years in Verona. I am a past president of the Wisconsin Dental Association, although I'm not here today specifically speaking on behalf of the WDA. The last 5 months, I retired from my private practice, and now the last 5 months I've been working for Access Community Health Center. DeForest is part of the service area for the Madison federally qualified health centers that we are, safety net clinics, seeing folks that include folks coming from DeForest as well. And the reason I'm here today is I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist per se, but I'm a general dentist that sees patients, and I've been doing it for a long time. And I've seen this most acutely now the last 5 minutes. I need to step back. I'm currently working for Access out in Dodgeville. So it's a ways away from you all, but in many regards, it's similar in that it's a far more rural area or community than it is certainly than Madison is or than Middleton is where I live, but much more similar to you all. And I was concerned in the sense that the amount of decay that I have come to see in non-fluoridated communities is exceptional. Dramatically more than what I saw in Madison, Verona, Middleton when I was practicing there. And I'm not here to say that is any kind of to scare you, it's to be prepared. I also am concerned that I know you're going to get a presentation upcoming here in a little bit. And I think some of the misinformation that is there, I think you need to be very cautious. I'm going to stay and I would love to help answer or translate, if that's the right term, because I think we have too much misinformation in our world these days, and we need to be driven by the science and history rather than be driven by personal agendas. I have no personal agenda. I am close with a couple of the general dentists in your community here that are great folks. They don't gain anything by whether there is or isn't fluoride in the water, except that an important portion of what we do as dentists is try to prevent dental disease. And fluoride has been very effective in doing that. And there are no studies in the United States that show that there is harm to fluoride at the levels in which you're fluoridating at and at the recommended EPA levels. There is, without a doubt, I think at high levels, there's concern that's there. And one of the arguments that I know is said is that at any chemical level, well, there's chlorine that's used in all of our municipal waters as well, isn't it, to help sanitize things. We know that in the proper amounts, chlorine is very effective and serves its purpose in keeping our water safe, right? But also we know that that same chlorine at the wrong level would be outright fatal and toxic. And so I think what we have to keep in mind is the benefit and at safe levels what that is. The last thing I'd like to just.
Doctor, we are
I'm
at
out.
3
Okay,
minutes.
that's fine. Thank you.
Question?
Are we doing questions now, or do we need to do that during discussion? Do you have questions? Go ahead.
Doctor, I had a chance to ask a question of a fellow dentist. He practices up in Wausau. I asked him, what are the benefits of fluoridation in water to secondary teeth or permanent teeth?
Mhm.
And he says there's none. Once the teeth emerge, the fluoridation in the water does very little. And fluoride toothpaste topical varnish of fluoride does the most. That and brushing your teeth, correct? So fluoride in water doesn't do anything for post-emergent adult teeth, correct?
No. I respectfully don't mean to disagree with your friend that you talked to. Now, topical fluoride is the most benefit to adult teeth. That's very clear and overwhelmingly. We do know that some fluoride will precipitate or come out in saliva and does provide more so from a topical benefit. But fluoride works from the outside in. This is where our toothpaste, fluoride rinses, fluoride varnish that's put on at the dentist. Although we have to keep in mind, only about 50% of folks with private dental insurance go to the dentist. And folks that are on Medicaid, or 9 out of the 10 that I see, only not even 30% in the state of Wisconsin-wise go to the dentist. So an awful lot of folks that have access don't necessarily go, one of the other benefits. But fluoride that is incorporated, that is ingested as children, as teeth are developing, is when it's incorporated into the enamel and makes that enamel more resistant to acids. And acid is what causes tooth decay. So you're absolutely right that once a tooth is fully erupted and basically done growing, it isn't incorporated inside out any longer.
That's
But yes. There is, there is a slight benefit from within saliva, it's believed, but it's small comparatively. The benefit really are in developing teeth.
Thank you, doctor. Any other questions? Go ahead.
One of the things I was concerned about was when it's applied in the office itself, the topical,
Yes.
and it's done yearly, how long does that last on the teeth?
Yeah, that's a great question that I can't give you a scientific answer for that, meaning how long. I will tell you that I do think it depends on a variety of factors, including mostly those in the individual, meaning so that the idea behind fluoride, when it's applied topically at a higher doses like that in the office, and keep in mind, as I mentioned, most people are not actually getting that, because unfortunately, the majority of folks are not actually going to the dentist twice a year. I wish they were. I would love to see that happen, but they're not. The ideal recommendation is that fluoride varnish like that would be applied every 3 months. The overwhelming majority of people are obviously not getting that, but that would be considered the optimal interval. But from the point that it's placed to the point that it's no longer providing that topical benefit, I don't want to give you a wrong number, so I can't give you a number of days that would be the case.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for the doctor? Thank you, Patrick.
Can I just offer one thing? And I should have been watching the clock. Just with regards to the cost side, may I have, is that okay? Or I could I'd be happy to wait and come back later, just to give you an option.
We have to stay to what we need to do for the comment, but there will be a discussion coming up, and that will be a time where any committee member can ask follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you.
So if you're willing to stay on, or anybody in the audience, please stay on in case there's questions.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Chris Kammer. Again, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure, you bet. I'm Dr. Chris Kammer. I live at 4809 Sherwood Road in Madison, Wisconsin. Okay. All right, so what happens when DeForest removes fluoride from their water supply? Which I believe they most likely will do. It's just my feeling from what other cities are doing. Dentists may say that you'll have a 25% increase in tooth decay. So from the dentist perspective, it's kind of a no-brainer for some dentists to just go along with that because it won't take any effort to reach the most vulnerable. And it's important to reach the most vulnerable. And the underserved as well. So, and it's pretty, 25% reduction in tooth decay, that is a small benefit. I would describe it like this, like instead of getting 8 cavities, you'll get 6 cavities. That would be a 25% reduction. Okay, now to me, that's not good enough. And, it's unacceptable because dentists know there's a better way to prevent and halt tooth decay with a better medicine called SDF. That is silver diamine fluoride, and it's applied topically only twice a year. You don't have to drink fluoride every day. You can just put this on twice a year, and most dentists will agree that that's the best way, as Dr. Teep just said, that's the best way to get fluoride. So if you combine that with a sealant, after doing that, you're gonna have a 96% reduction in tooth decay risk, okay? That beats 25% by a lot. Now, the American Dental Association recommends and prioritizes this care that I'm talking about right now. Also, it's paid for fully by state aid insurance for all ages. It can be delivered, you can deliver it to kids where they're at. In schools, you don't need a dental office to do this. You can deliver it in schools. Pop-up clinics can deliver this to everyone else. And I've been doing this all over the state to reach the underserved in non-dental clinics with this simple, non-invasive, no-drill care. Now, if DeForest wants the best solution that will satisfy both sides and make history with this brilliant, novel approach, I'll help them make it happen. And I will work with you to set this up in your town, and then you can, in good conscience, remove the fluoride from your water supply. And in time, as more and more cities wrestle with this controversy, they will take a strong look at the DeForest plan, for it really is the only plan that makes sense and satisfies both sides. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I see Eric and then Dawn.
Hi, Dr. Chris. Your father and you took care of me since I was 3, just so you know.
Oh, awesome.
I knew your father very, very well. I do have a question because you did it and your father did it to me lots of times. You would apply the fluoride. Now, from the time I was little to now, what is the difference in the application itself? What makes this, what is it, SDF? So much
Silver
better?
diamine fluoride is a topical solution combined of silver ions, which most holistic and homeopathic people go, that's pretty darn natural. It's in a lot of homeopathic solutions, silver ions and fluoride. So the silver ions kill the bacteria of tooth decay and it soaks into it like a sponge, going deeper and deeper into the decay. And then the fluoride will harden the tooth structure. And everybody agrees, was mentioned here before by the people that don't want fluoride in their water. They say they understand that topical fluoride is a good thing. This is topical fluoride at a state-of-the-art kind of way.
Is it, and you stated though that it's free. Now, is that through any insurance or does the state pay for it? How does that
The
work?
state pays, thanks to Dr. Russ Dunkel, who spoke here last time, he had a large part in making sure that our state of Wisconsin, which is amazing, that they will cover this preventive care. And it's also a therapeutic care because it will kill the bacteria in early cavities so you don't have to put a drill into the tooth. I've had a drill-free practice for 5 years. I've been to Bolivia testing this out with studies. Like I said, the American Dental Association recommends this care. This is real, and all dentists know it's available. And so this, to me, would be the solution that would satisfy both sides, because we want fluoride to have a preventive effect in the teeth, right?
Thank
But
you,
we-
Doctor. We need to ask the question
I'm
for
sorry.
Dawn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned that you could have pop-up clinics per se. Have you done any of those yet?
I've done it in Green Bay, Boscobel, Portage. There's one more. I do it in a lot of nursing homes. I take this care to where it's most needed, and it's a godsend for the underserved. And it's great for everybody else too, because you don't have to drill. You know, amputating tooth decay is archaic. It's been done for 100 years, but we know now we can heal tooth decay. It's a bacterial disease. It's like strep throat. You wouldn't cut your throat out to cure your strep throat, right? You use an antibiotic. So this antibiotic solution, SDF, silver ion diamine fluoride, is a antibiotic to the bacteria in tooth decay. It kills the decay, and it follows up with the fluoride inside the tooth. None of it is taken up systemically. The studies have shown, and that's a concern. People don't want fluoride taken up systemically. So using this topically just twice a year does an amazing thing. And in Bolivia, there'll be a study coming out very soon that it will show, and the study's already out there, and the American Dental Association already approves of this, recommends it, and prioritizes it, although the American Dental Association doesn't mandate anything.
Yep.
They
Thank
leave
you
it up
again,
to the
Doctor.
dentist to make the best decision.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question? I get going and
Any other committee members' questions? Thank you for your
I
presentation.
have copies for this too, if anybody's interested in that statement. So thank you.
Do you want to, if you have an extra copy, you could give it to Reese and then we could have it for the record. Reese, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one clarifying point based off of the public appearance. So even though we'll be having a discussion point, it doesn't allow for us to bring back public appearance. But you as the committee do have the right to make a, let's see, as the discretion of the president to extend the time briefly to allow a statement. Alternatively, the time allotment may be extended by a voice vote. And then each committee member would be able to ask that one clarifying question. So I just wanted to clear that up, as I know you stated that with the gentleman before.
Well, I think what Reese is getting at is I had mentioned during the discussion item of 7.2 that I thought we could ask questions of the floor. And you're telling me that we can't do that? Okay.
That's how I read. I pulled up the ordinance on our public speaking comments, so.
Okay, I'm sorry for that confusion.
Yes, so I'm more just saying if you wanted to talk to the gentleman again, you'd have to make a voice vote.
Yeah, I personally would like to ask it's an odd thing because I wish Dr. Patrick Teep was still at the table because I'd like to ask him a follow-up question on the cost. So,
So if somebody makes a motion to offer 2 more minutes to Dr. Teep, and it passes by a majority.
yeah, thank you, Eric. I will second that. So if we could, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Doctor, we can just hit one twice, I guess, but Dr. Patrick, do you want to have, I guess, 2 extra minutes?
And I'll keep it even just in respect for all of your time. Just the comment I was going to bring up from a cost perspective, because I noticed in looking at some of the online material here was related to the costs of converting or renewing the equipment was around $9,500, I believe. Does that sound about right? And that the ongoing cost was about $3,500. I can't speak to the ongoing cost aspect of it. With regards to the $3,500 is, I just want to make all of you aware of, if you're not already, the Delta Dental of Wisconsin does have a fund that is specifically set aside for municipalities, for grants, for municipalities that find the cost is prohibitive of them in any way from as far as the purchasing equipment or converting equipment. So I believe that would be within your situation here. And I did inquire today through DHS, and that they take the applications for that and then farm that back to Delta Dental. And I know there are a number of communities over years that have utilized that. So that may be that, and I can't speak to whether that's an automatic drop in the bucket, $9,500. I don't want to give you any wrong information when I know there's plenty of misinformation out there. But that there is grant money available, and that very well could offset some or all of your conversion costs as far as the equipment and such. So that was what I was going to comment about.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
And we did have one more person, Johnny Johnson, that wanted to speak. Guess I'm looking at Reese because you probably have to give him permission and things.
I think, yeah, he'll be able to unmute. Johnny, if you could just make sure that you do fill out a public speaking form, it can be found on the Village of DeForest, or just after you're done talking, that's fine.
Yep,
Thank
and
you.
please state your name and address for the record too.
Yes, Dr. Johnny Johnson. I am in Chiefland, Florida, P.O. Box 2450. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I wasn't sure that I would be able to. I want to first tell you that I find it very interesting that I have been targeted as someone who is not telling the truth. I will tell you that I'm an ordained minister as well. I will put my hand on a Bible any day and tell you that what I am saying is based on the preponderance of evidence around the world on fluoridation. Dr. Neary was one that led and worked hard to keep Madison, or had Madison stop fluoridation when Brenda Stoudemire brought it forward and tried to get it stopped. They also wrote up Dr. Dunkel and another health department person. Brenda took it to the state health department and challenged their licenses, dental licenses and hygiene license, based on what they had to say at a meeting. You will notice there's probably no one there from the health department tonight. And there are threats made against health department folks in every state by those that oppose it. And it's unfortunate because it stifles them from doing what they are supposed to be doing. As the engineer spoke before, there are people who do research, and there are people that evaluate the research. What we read online is something that you can get good information, you can get bad information. And once you go down a rabbit hole, if you're looking at something that you're concerned about, you go to another link, and you can get to points to where you're getting misinformation big time. The dentist that spoke before about fluoridation from the Dental Association, he was with the Wisconsin Dental Association before, absolutely correct. Water fluoridation gets into the developing permanent teeth under the gums in children, helps to make them stronger from the inside out. Once the teeth come in, fluoridated water does mix with saliva, toothpaste mixed with saliva, and releases a low amount of fluoride 24/7. That's what helps prevent the most cavities. Both of them work together. You can't do just the outside without having the swallowing of fluoride too. You're going to hear about high quality studies. These studies that are going to be talked about in a presentation are absolutely considered low quality studies by scientists and researchers around the world. They are not high quality. So calling them that does not make it so. The preponderance of evidence on fluoridated water and IQ is that there is not a single bit of change in a person's IQ over their lifetime by drinking fluoridated water through very, very strong studies from around the world. I would like to tell you that I appreciate your time in letting me speak with you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Please keep your water fluoridated for the benefit of everyone.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from the committee members? Seeing none? Oh, Eric? Yeah.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes, sir.
one question for you. Over time, I mean, you said that it does nothing. Have they found it does anything to anything else orally or to the stomach or anything by digesting it? I mean, we've seen the pictures, quite literally, of the facility with it melting through the concrete. So I have to ask, what do they claim now?
Well, this is the issue. When we're talking about a water facility, we're talking about a solution 23% hydrofluorosilicic acid. There are maintenance issues that are protective of the floor, putting polyethylene paint down. That's one of the issues that is done, cleaning up spills. If you have leaks of gas that are showing up as etching of your glass, there's protocols that the DNR can help with. Those things don't have to happen. So that's a separate issue. Now with the body, there are studies and reviews of studies done every few years required by law. And one major one in Ireland, they look at every single health system, mouth, liver, thyroid, kidneys, your every body system. And there's no harm at all ever found from fluoridated water at the levels we're talking about. None. And we found out about it by accident in 1901, like a scientific accident, that it was already existing, 13th most abundant mineral in the Earth's crust. People had brown stained teeth and no cavities. And Colorado Springs when the dentist moved there. So
Thank you.
there's no health
Thank you.
issue. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else online wishing to talk at the public comment or out on the floor? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment and move on to item number 6. It's a presentation by Brenda Stoudemire and lawyer, which I'm assuming has a name, maybe the Michael Connett on fluoride.
I'm just going to make a brief statement and then pass it off to Michael.
Yep, and maybe for our sake, could you also state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Brenda Stoudemire, 1278 Doty Street, Green Bay. I'm the Wisconsin mom who is a plaintiff in the federal lawsuit against the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency over the neurotoxicity of fluoride chemicals that are added to the drinking water supply. I also work in the Wisconsin water industry as well. And I've spent over a decade reading and analyzing fluoride research. So I looked over the agenda packet materials, and our local and state health department is misleading us on the safety of fluoridation and using outdated marketing materials. Modern research has shown significant risks, particularly to children's brain development at the levels currently used in U.S. drinking water. In September, Judge Edward Chen ruled in our federal court case that fluoridation at 0.7 milligrams per liter, the optimal level used nationwide, poses an unreasonable risk to reduced IQ in children. His decision was based on evidence from the National Toxicology Program, which concluded with moderate confidence that fluoride exposure is associated with cognitive harm. Importantly, leading fluoride researcher, Dr. Ashley Malin, she pointed out a couple weeks ago to the Wausau Water and Sewer that under EPA's safety standards, fluoride levels would need to be 0.15 milligrams per liter or lower to protect children's developing brains. And Dr. Ashley Malin did conduct US research on the neurotoxicity of fluoride. I know it was mentioned earlier that there hasn't been any research in the US, and there has been, and there is more research that's going to be published. The claim that fluoridation strengthens teeth systemically by drinking water is false. The CDC and dental research confirm that fluoride's primarily benefit is topical on the surface of teeth. Swallowing fluoride unnecessarily exposes the body to risks, including neurotoxicity, dental fluorosis, and thyroid dysfunction. Additionally, claims of cost savings, like $20 is saved for every dollar invested, is a speculative and outdated statement. New studies such as the Cochrane Review, the Lotus, and Catfish studies demonstrate that modern fluoridation reduces tooth decay by only 3% or less, not the exaggerated 25% figure often cited. The minimum benefits do not outweigh the significant harm. Our local health department ignores a critical oversight. No Wisconsin health agency monitors fluoride levels in our children's bodies. Dane County Public Health has admitted there is no program to measure fluoride exposure, even in vulnerable populations like infants and children. And without this data, claims of safety are baseless. The claim that fluoridation is equitable is equally flawed. Low-income families, formula-fed infants, and vulnerable groups are disproportionately harmed because they consume more fluoride relative to their body weight and lack access to alternatives like filtered water. Instead of improving equity, fluoridation increases harm to those already at risk. Finally, endorsements from entrenched organizations like the CDC and ADA are not evidence of safety. These groups rely on outdated assumptions and face professional and financial pressures to maintain fluoridation policies, despite modern toxicological findings. Policymakers must recognize that clear evidence of harm and apply the precautionary principle by halting water fluoridation to protect public health, especially in children. And now I'm going to hand it over to my attorney, Michael Connett, from our federal lawsuit, and he will go over some of the statements that have been said today, and then also some of the findings from our court case that the public doesn't necessarily is aware of all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing, and if Michael wants to share, he can. At that point, you should have access to do so.
Thank you. And Michael, could you please also state your name and address for the record?
Yes, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present here today. My address is 105 Kingston Road in Exeter, New Hampshire. I will keep my comments here brief, but I certainly would welcome questions at the end. I was the lead attorney in the court case that has been referenced today, Food and Water Watch versus EPA. The case lasted for 7 years, so it was a pretty extensive litigation. We focused on only one health effect of fluoride. We focused on the impact on the brain or neurotoxicity. So we didn't look at things like bone fracture or arthritis or some of the other health concerns linked to fluoride exposure. We had in this case not one trial, but 2 trials. And these trials were held before a federal judge, an Obama-appointed federal judge. And in total, we had 17 days of testimony. And testimony from government scientists, as well as scientists who we, the plaintiffs, called, who have done some of the leading research on fluoride in the brain, as well as scientists whose research on other toxicants like mercury and lead have shaped government regulations around the world to protect people from harm. So we had testimony from Dr. Philippe Grandjean, whose research on mercury and IQ has been relied upon by the EPA to set the safe level to protect people from harm. We had testimony from Dr. Bruce Lanphier, whose research on lead and IQ has shaped our safety standards here in the US. The CDC safety standards on lead are based in large part on Dr. Lanphier's research, and government agencies around the world have relied on Dr. Lanphier's research. So the court had the good fortune in this case of not just hearing one side, not just hearing the plaintiff's version of the evidence, not just hearing the government's version of the evidence, but hearing both sides in a way where the evidence was vetted again and again and again. You know, they say that the purpose of litigation, it's a truth-finding mission. Under the crucible of cross-examination, you get to challenge someone's opinions and to really get at the underlying substance and merits. And that's an opportunity that we had in this litigation. Not only do we have 17 days of testimony, but we had about 30 depositions. Depositions are sort of like trial testimony, but usually in a hotel conference room, you get to examine and ask questions in depth to scientists. So I deposed probably around 25 to 30 scientists, usually for 7 hours on the record. So we had extensive testimony in the case. So I'd like to talk, just to start with, some of the things that were not actually in dispute. And some of what I'm about to say may surprise you given the comments of Johnny Johnson and others. But the first thing is EPA scientists in this case did not dispute that fluoride is a neurotoxicant. None of their experts got on the stand to dispute whether if you ingest too much fluoride, it will impact the brain. It was undisputed that at a certain level of exposure, fluoride is neurotoxic. It will harm brain development. That's the first point. The second point is, and now obviously, as you may imagine, EPA's primary position in this case was that we just don't know enough right now as to where the safe level turns into a toxic level. And so their main argument was, well, we just don't have enough evidence to know where it becomes a problem, okay? That was their primary litigation position. But throughout this litigation, I asked EPA, I asked the CDC, I asked the FDA, and I asked all the manufacturers of the chemicals that we add to water for fluoridation. I asked them all the same question. Can you point me to safety data that will allow me to know where the safe level turns into a toxic level? What is that level? What is it? Not a single one of those organizations had an answer. None of them knew what the safe level versus the toxic level was. So I deposed, for example, CDC under oath. I asked them, what is the upper tolerable level that people can ingest without having effects on their brain? And the answer was, we don't know. That's not information that we have. I think it's important for you to consider when you hear claims that fluoridation is safe, fluoridation is safe, fluoridation is safe. Well, how do you know fluoridation is safe if you don't know the safe level? Now, another thing that was not in dispute in this case is that these birth cohort studies that have been funded by the National Institutes of Health, the birth cohort studies conducted in Canada by Green 2019, Till 2020, and the birth cohort studies conducted in Mexico, Bashash 2017, Bashash 2018, Goodman 2022. These birth cohort studies Everyone agreed in this case, including EPA's experts, that these are high quality studies. Now, I think Johnny Johnson said he didn't think they were high quality. Well, the EPA had every reason in the world in this case, if they felt those studies were not high quality, they had every reason in the world to make that argument to the judge. But they declined to challenge these studies as being high quality studies. Sure, they had some methodological quibbles here and there, but they agreed that these are high quality epidemiological studies. Likewise, with the National Toxicology Program's systematic review, the NTP. Everyone agreed in this case that the NTP systematic review was a high quality review. No dispute about that. The judge certainly found the NTP's review to be a high quality review. And as Brenda mentioned a few minutes ago, the NTP's conclusion, their primary conclusion is they have moderate confidence that fluoride is consistently associated with reductions in IQ at 1.5 parts per million and above. Okay, that's the primary conclusion of the NTP. Now, advocates of fluoridation have often stated, well, that's 2 times higher than the optimal, so-called optimal level that we add to water, 2 times higher. And they make it seem that that's a huge difference, a huge margin that should give us all comfort that water fluoridation is safe because it's 2 times higher than the so-called optimal. Well, EPA scientists didn't agree with that. And I'll give you, I deposed Dr. Stanley Barone, who is EPA's main risk assessment expert at the office that oversees the Toxic Substances Control Act. Dr. Barone agreed under oath that there should be at least a margin of 10 between the level associated with neurotoxicity and the exposure level. A margin of 10. That was under oath in this litigation. Now, a margin of 10 would take the level from 1.5 down to 0.15, which, as you know, is below the level that we add to drinking water for fluoridation. So what did the court find? The court concluded, now I've heard there's been some media articles about the court case that have made some errors in their discussion. One of the errors I've seen is that sometimes people describe the court as finding a potential risk from fluoridation. That's not correct. The court's conclusion was there is an unreasonable risk at 0.7 parts per million. To quote, fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. That was the court's conclusion. Not that there's potential risks at 0.7, but that there is a risk and it's an unreasonable one. Now, to be clear, and you've probably heard this, the court did accept that there's not complete certainty of harm based on current evidence at 0.7. But as the experts in this case, including EPA's experts, made very clear, you absolutely, emphatically do not need certainty of harm to find a risk. In all of EPA's risk evaluations under this statute, the Toxic Substances Control Act, EPA has never had certainty of harm at the exposure level to find risk. Instead, what EPA does is it looks at whether our human exposure levels are too close to the hazard level. That's what they look at. They don't look to see if our human exposure levels are absolutely like we know them to be hazardous. It's whether our exposure levels are too close, too precariously close to the hazard level. That's how EPA assesses risk. And using that framework, the court concluded that the levels that we add to drinking water are far too close to the levels that we know can cause neurotoxic effects. So the court found that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk. And based on that finding, the court ordered the EPA to take regulatory action to address and eliminate this risk. Now, some observers have pointed out and emphasized that the court did not tell EPA what to do. It did not tell the EPA, you need to ban fluoridation, you need to do A, B, C, and D. That is correct. But what's important to note is that the court has no authority to tell EPA what to do. It does not have the legal authority under the statute, and also for reasons of constitutional considerations, the court does not have the authority to tell the EPA what regulatory actions to take. And so when someone tells you that, well, hey, the court didn't tell the EPA to ban fluoridation, that's technically true, but they leave out that the court had no authority to do that. So it really doesn't mean that much. I'm happy to answer questions about the court case, but I thought before closing here with my comments that I would respond to this statement that I was provided today that comes from Madison and Dane County Public Health. I thought I would just respond to a few of the points in this document. The first point is they mention here at the top that, quote, communities fluoridate their water because it bathes teeth with a low level of fluoride. And what's important to consider there is what they're basically telling you, and it's true, is that fluoride's benefit, as has been discussed today, is a topical one. It is not a systemic one, okay? And that is what we believed. It's what public health officials believed when they started fluoridating back in the 40s and 50s, that you needed to swallow fluoride to get the benefit. But we now know that's not true. The predominant, if not exclusive benefit comes from the topical contact with the teeth. Now that has important implications, and I'll tell you a couple of them. In the court case, I deposed, as I mentioned earlier, the CDC, a representative of the CDC, and I talked to them at length about how fluoride actually works to prevent cavities. And the CDC representative agreed that it's predominantly topical, no dispute. He also agreed under oath that because there's not a system, it's a predominantly topical benefit. He agreed there's no benefit at all to the teeth, no benefit from in utero exposure. So prenatally, when the baby's in the womb, no benefit. He agreed there is no benefit during the first 6 months of life, during infancy. Now, why is that important? It's important because in our court case, everyone agreed, EPA's experts, our experts, that that period of life in the womb, early infancy, that's where you have the greatest vulnerability to fluoride's impact on the brain. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, the brain is rapidly developing. We know that the rapidly developing brain is more vulnerable to the effects of toxic chemicals. And during that period of life, we don't have a well-developed blood-brain barrier, which is what keeps chemicals from getting into the brain. So there's a vulnerability during that early period of life. So we now have a situation where during this vulnerable period of life, you have no benefit to offset it. So I think as a policy point of view, I think we need to consider, is it appropriate to be delivering this chemical to everyone's water, including mothers who are pregnant, mothers who have newborn infants who they're bottle feeding with fluoridated tap water? You know, shouldn't the public water supply be safe and appropriate for everybody to drink? Not just some people, not even most people, just shouldn't the public water supply be safe for everybody? Going back to the Madison and Dane County Public Health Statement, they say that more than 209 million people in the US have fluoridated water, and that's correct. But what's important to note there is that's more people that drink fluoridated water than the rest of the world combined. America is by far and away the most fluoridated nation on earth. If you go to Europe, the vast majority of Europe, 98% of Europe, does not have fluoride chemicals added to its water, okay? The vast majority of Europe. If you go to Japan, not a single community in Japan fluoridates its water. So yes, here in the US, we are a heavily fluoridated nation, but it's important to keep in mind the international context and recognize that most advanced industrialized nations have decided not to fluoridate their water. And to be clear, these countries in Europe and Japan have abundant amount of topical fluoride products like toothpaste, right? Just like we have here in the US. They're not opposed to the use of fluoride in dental products. No country has ever banned fluoride in dental products, because with fluoride dental products like toothpaste, you apply it topically to the teeth where you bang for the buck. That's where the benefit is. And you can minimize the ingestion, which is where the risk is. So in Europe, you'll get plenty of fluoride toothpaste, but you won't have fluoride added to your water. I want to briefly address the comments earlier about tooth decay increasing in communities that have ended fluoridation. Just to note that there are 5 peer-reviewed published studies in the dental literature since 2000, which have found no increase in dental decay, no increase in cavities subsequent to the end of fluoridation. Those studies have been done in Germany, in Cuba, in Canada, and Finland. There is a study from Calgary, Canada, which found an increase in cavities, which it claimed to be a result of fluoridation ending. But that study, for reasons I can explain if you would like, is a deeply flawed study that I would strongly recommend you not to rely upon. But I can address why if you would like in Q&A. And I'll close here by responding to a few points at the bottom of this document from the Madison and Dane County Public Health Department. It says here, and I'm frankly surprised to see this statement made by government employees, but they say there is no evidence that the current level of community water fluoridation in DeForest harms health. No evidence. That is just not correct. It's factually false. It's just a factually incorrect statement. And I can tell you, for example, some of the recent peer-reviewed studies that have found significant associations between the levels of fluoride that we get from fluoridated water and neurological effects. You have the Malin 2024 study. This was a study published earlier this year in the journal JAMA Open Network. This is a study based on a cohort in Los Angeles, which was dealing with a community that had 0.7 parts per million in its water, same level as DeForest. And that study found a significant increase in neurodevelopmental problems in the children born to mothers consuming water with 0.7 parts per million. You have the Green 2019 study from Canada, another study looking at mothers living in fluoridated areas, finding a significant association between the level of fluoride in the mother's urine and IQ loss in boys. Okay, so significant effect on IQ in mothers consuming fluoridated drinking water. You had a study in 2020 by Till, again from the Canadian cohort, finding that infants consuming fluoridated water through infant formula had significant reductions in IQ. You have studies from the Mexico City cohort where although the mothers are exposed to fluoridated salt and not fluoridated water, their urinary fluoride levels are essentially the same as what you have in fluoridated water communities. And these Mexico City studies have consistently found reductions in IQ correlated with the level of fluoride in the mother's urine. So when you hear statements that there's no evidence of harm, that is not a factually correct statement. And lastly, this document states, quote, the levels discussed in recent reports and litigation are more than double the current levels used in community water fluoridation. That also is not a correct statement, because as someone who was heavily involved with litigation, the lead attorney for the plaintiffs, I can tell you that in our litigation, there was evidence presented to the court showing harm at 0.7, okay, which the court cites in its decision, okay? For example, the court has a lengthy discussion of a benchmark dose analysis, which concluded that 0.3 parts per million in the mother's urine is associated with IQ loss. That is a lower level of fluoride in urine than the average person gets in a fluoridated area. The court addressed that study at length in its opinion, found it to be credible, and certainly considered it. Now, the court's decision does not depend on that analysis, but the court found it to be credible. So when you hear statements like the levels discussed in the litigation were all well above the levels used in fluoridation, that is not a factually correct statement. I've gone on probably too long at this point in time, so I will.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I apologize for that, but thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Michael. And is it Brenda? Is there any questions from the committee? Bill?
Yeah, Brenda, you've looked at the materials online for this meeting. It shows a barrel of, for short, fluoride acid. It lists the ingredients: fluoride, lead, arsenic,
The contaminants.
iron. Lead and arsenic aren't good for you, correct?
Yes,
Well, why would they put those in there? Is it because fluoride binds to lead and doesn't like to let go of it?
so from my
Okay.
understanding, it's from the process when they mine the phosphate rock. There is lead because lead occurs naturally in the earth, just like arsenic and other things, aluminum, radionucleotides. So these fluoride chemicals, they're not purified before they are shipped to the water utilities. They contain these contaminants, and the amount of contaminants all fluctuate but they are there. And the EPA does have a maximum contaminant level goal of 0 for both lead and arsenic, yet they're kind of turning a blind eye to the problem that these chemicals are contaminated with these elements.
And then, you know, there was comparison of chlorine in our water. And you take a gallon of water and just, this isn't correct, 10 milliliters of chlorine to disinfect it. You can test it after you've put the chlorine in there to see if there's any, was it chloroform that they're trying to get? Is that the,
So
what's the bacteria? Yeah. Now,
kill your bacteria.
right, and that's a quantitative result that they can see. After they add the chlorine, all the bad stuff is killed, right?
Yes, not all utilities in Wisconsin do add chlorine. There are a lot that receive groundwater and they do not add chlorine unless they add the polyphosphates for lead corrosion control, because once you add polyphosphates, that is a food supply to bacteria, so you must chlorinate at that point. But we do have a lot of problems with chlorine as well, because chlorine creates disinfection byproducts when it combines with carbon matter in our water. So just because, you know, we add chlorine, it's not necessarily the best thing ever, because it does increase certain cancer rates for bladder cancers and stuff like that. So chlorine has its problems too. Not every municipality adds chlorine. You don't have to, as long as your bacteria and your fecal is low.
What I'm getting to is you add chlorine, it has an effect. It can be measured right then and there. Fluoride, you add it, how do you measure? Your efficiency in preventing, well, cavities are caused by bacteria. But I mean, it's like throwing a pitcher of water in a pool with fluoride. You don't know if the whole pool is, you know, the surface of the pool is going to, with chlorine, you know, you put a gallon of 5% chlorine in, your organisms are going to die.
Sure, you are testing chlorine in the system to make sure your residuals are, you know, you are getting some sort of chlorine at wherever the house is or wherever you test. Fluoride, we only test as it's leaving the plant. We don't test for fluoride at people's houses. I think it was Sun Prairie that had a fluoride overfeed to their water tower last year. And they said that because fluoride is denser than water, they had to flush their tower multiple times to get that fluoride level back down. So I'm not the expert on how much fluoride is, you know, in the distribution system on a dead end or something. I've heard the levels can fluctuate higher than the 0.7 that leaves the system or leaves the plant.
I think we've had to flush our system. How often do we do that, Judd, or?
And can I ask, this seems like it's getting off the topic of the presentation, and that maybe is something we talk during the discussion.
Oh, okay.
Do you have more?
She has water testing.
Yeah. If she has
expertise.
knowledge of it too.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you answered my questions. Thanks.
Anything else, Bill? You have the.
Nope.
Anybody else? Questions? Well, that's what I'm saying. The questions for Judd and Greg will answer during the discussion part. Yep, Matt?
Brenda, right? You said you work in the water industry. Can you tell us a little bit about your background or in what capacity you do that?
Sure. I have a background in environmental engineering with a focus on drinking water and wastewater. I used to work at the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District here, treating all your wastewater. Now I'm a training specialist for all the drinking water and wastewater operators in the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Brenda and Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next agenda item is 7.1, which is discussion on our meeting dates. I would actually like to make a motion, and it'll be my motion to take things out of order and move to 7.2, discussion and recommendation on continuing or discontinuing fluoridation of the drinking water in the village. Is there anybody willing to second that? Thank you, Eric. All those in favor of moving to 7.2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are on 7.2. And I guess I'm looking maybe at Judd, if you could. I think a good way to do this is that we've heard a very in-depth presentation tonight and had a number of different comments. Judd, could you maybe talk about what was also in the packet for everybody that's currently online or will future read this, just to know that we've been presented with a lot of data?
I certainly, I included the memo. So it included in the packet was, and I wish I could bring it up, but I'm unable to for some reason right now. But my memo for this meeting of the Public Services Committee, just kind of reiterating what had occurred previously at our last meeting of this body, and then the village board meeting that happened subsequently the next day. Village board has postponed action or discussion until the second meeting of January, which I believe is January 21st. And so this body won't meet before then, because the next time we would meet is scheduled as Martin Luther King Day, and the village offices are closed. So we will work, this is your opportunity to make sure the board has your recommendations from it. Reese has the magic, no, all right. So I included from there was my PowerPoint that I delivered to the village board last time, PowerPoint that was delivered by Dane County Health and Human Services. There was information from additional information Dane County had provided besides the PowerPoint. And then Reese is bringing up the whole stuff for us, good. And then there was the Taylor slides from the National Toxicology and NTP and the Washington Post opinion, and a court ruling that shared what Brenda and her attorney worked through. So that was all part of the packet. And then in the memo itself that I sent this time, I shared with this body, here's where the village board, you could watch that on YouTube. It started about an hour and 1 minute into the recording, and shared everybody's, the opportunity that Dane County Health had to present their information, with the fluoride lobbyist, Johnny Johnson, being the primary speaker in their behalf. So that was included in there as well. So my again, how I got to here, and I appreciate Dr. Teep, sorry, his information with regards to Delta Dental. That's great. It's not really necessarily a cost prohibition thing, more so for me as a director of public services. This is something that I have done research on. I've looked to experts in the field and have balanced it on both sides, right? There, in my opinion, fluoride is a benefit, but it's most beneficial when it's topically applied. And I err on the side of caution when I look at it, and the systemic intake of it. I don't think there's enough information to say that it's safe, and I'd err on the side of caution and just removing it. The reason it came up at this time is because we have to replace our pumps. It's $9,500, roughly, I think, like $3,200 or something per well house. 3 of our well houses we fluoridate. The one to the south, our well house 6, we don't even have fluoride added to it. So our whole community isn't fluoridated. That's a hard word to say. I don't think that's even the right word, but, so it's not something that, we have available to everybody in the community. And so I said, to me, before I'm going to invest $9,500, I want to have this discussion. And then shortly thereafter, President-elect Trump and his appointment to the CDC, if I'm not mistaken, Health and Human Services, that's where he's has said he may be outlawing it. So again, I didn't want to invest another $9,500 if there would be something else coming federally. So I brought it here to the board to have that discussion. My recommendation is we stop at this point, but I will certainly do whatever the village board directs, and you guys can give your recommendation to them. And I know there's questions, so.
And I would state too that, thank you for that summary. I just wanted to make it clear that we at the last meeting as the committee, public service committees, we postponed because we wanted more data, and I hope you can all agree we got quite a bit of data now. So Eric, I think you were the first up for questions.
Or Judd or Greg, what is in general for the water, our parts per million?
Naturally occurring, it's 0.1. So when we add, we get to the 0.7, which is the recommended dosage that they say to put into the water.
Okay, but I mean, in general, in water itself, how do we rank? Like, how does our water rank total? Because I know we add chlorine a lot. I'm just curious for other bacteriums and everything else, what is our average numbering for the water itself?
The average number of fluoride or what?
Everything, like the whole, like just test the water itself.
So we have a consumer confidence report that we're mandated to share every year. It comes out from the Department of Natural Resources. It's on our village website. I'm almost positive under the water side that anybody can access. I mean, there's a lot of things they test for that I don't have off the top of my head to tell you about it.
We're all compliant with all of our water sampling and.
No, I'm not saying that. I just was curious what the general, I'm gonna have my water filters replaced this next week before Christmas. And it comes down to, usually I can get it to like less than 5, which is pretty unheard of for the first 6 months of the year. So I'm just curious, because I'm gonna ask him exactly what it's taking out. Because I'm curious about what's in there, what we have, and what's actually taken out with my filter. I'm just, because a couple of my neighbors asked, they said, what do you use for water system? And I told them what I use, and they asked if it takes it out. And I said, I know it takes out a lot of stuff. So I'm just curious what the general, and I'll have to look it up.
Yeah,
No,
that'll be your best about it, to look up the CCR.
I can send you a link if everybody is interested, and I'll send the link to that
so we can,
latest CCR.
what he told me, I mean, he cleans it out, he tests without the filter, tells me what it currently is, so that's why I'd want to look it up. What it is before he takes the filters out then and after. And
Sure.
It's just, I'm curious because what it does take out is the filters weigh like 3 times as much at the end of the year. So
Every filter system is different and depends on what it's designed to filter out, right? If it's a reverse osmosis to a Brita pitcher, they all have different varying levels of porousness to those filters and what it can and cannot catch, right? So.
which is fine.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions, Bill?
Yeah, I forgot to ask you at the last meeting, why don't we fluoridate well number 6? I mean, we bought it from Tolkien Creek 15 years ago. If there's such a benefit to fluoride, wouldn't you put that in right away? Or
I don't know why when we acquired that, it wasn't part of it. I don't know why we didn't decide to add it at that point in time. Might have been, if I were to conjure a guess, we would have had to have upgraded that facility to have a separate space for the fluoride to live. And it's an older well house. I mean, the cost for infrastructure was probably pretty great at that point that we didn't want to introduce it, but that even predates my time serving on the board when we acquired the system from Burke back in early 2000, late 90s.
2006 or 7.
Yeah.
Also, that area was mostly commercial, industrial. And
Right.
now it's a lot more residential.
Residential, yeah. And flushing the system, how often we do that? You know, if we put too much chlorine in at times, or fluoride too, correct? At times, do you?
We try our very best not to. There's certainly accidents can occur. We do flush the system yearly. We go around twice a year, actually. We flush the hydrants. We really try to minimize the number of dead ends we have. Some developers actually think we're over the top by asking for looping, but we prefer all of our water mains to be looped, just so there isn't those dead ends where you just don't get stagnant water, not only just for buildup of chemicals, but just the general lack of moving water can cause other growth.
Okay. And if you Google fluoride accidents in water systems, there's a site that lists about 150 over the past 10 years where mixing problems or other problems occurred. So it's, you know, we might never have had it, but other municipalities have. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? Matt?
Maybe this was buried somewhere in all of the stuff I've been reading, but how long have we been fluoridating our water forest?
I don't really have an answer. I tried to ascertain when we started. I don't know that off. It was hard for me to find at this point. I'd probably have to go try to dig through the
Would you say it's like 10 years?
Oh,
60
longer.
years?
I would say
But it's been more than 20 because I've started 20 years ago. So we've been fluoridating since then.
I would imagine that we have been doing it for, I would say, venture to say 30 to 40 years.
Do we know if we've ever reached a level that was double what is recommended in our water supply?
Not since I've been in the water utility, we have not.
And then the flushing, is that, the purpose of the flush, is that fluoride driven, or is it just a general flush for a lot of other?
Flushing of our systems mandated by the Wisconsin DNR for a couple reasons. It's water quality and it scours the pipes when you open up hydrants and cleans the pipes out. So it's really not to get the excess, you know, chlorine, fluoride out of the water. It just helps clean the pipes and gets fresh water through the dead ends. And throughout the system, if there's an area that doesn't use as much water, it gets things moving.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, the lawyer had mentioned that there is evidence of negative effects in DeForest, but I didn't see anything about negative effects in DeForest. I think he was maybe making a point by correlating with other areas, but do we have any evidence of negative effects in DeForest from fluoride?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't think there's been a study done of our population and the effects of fluoride on it. I think he was probably more equating it to a, you know, it happens here, it happens there kind of scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I guess I would ask a bit of a follow-up on Matt. There was talk of, I remember at a different meeting where there was mixing of, was it the chlorine and fluoride that had at least.
Yeah, I mean,
evacuate?
we had an accident where the chlorine and fluoride came together in the one room and it smoked up the, you know, the fumes from the mixing of the chemicals, created a gas.
Yeah, so maybe.
It was very hazardous, right? I mean, it's not we had to clear the well house, open it, you know, air it out, and it could overwhelm our guys, right? I mean, they have to wear protective equipment when working with fluoride, just to protect themselves.
Thank you. Is there?
Can we ask them one other question?
I don't believe so, but if you could ask the question, maybe Greg or
How much
Judd
would
could.
And not asking that we do this now, but what would the actual cost be to run a cost analysis on Oh, what would it actually cost to do a cost analysis on or breakdown of problems with fluoride in our area? I mean, it would have to be astronomical, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't even know. I couldn't venture. I mean, we'd have to work with some scientists, I don't know if it's somebody at the university, if a student wanted to do a research paper or other things. I don't know. To me, I think that Dr. Kammer's idea makes a lot of sense to me. I'm always a big proponent of.
That's what I'm
finding
getting
new-
at is we want to try to save $9,500 and a couple others, but a study would cost far more, I would think, wouldn't it? In order to find out the exact, and if we could even find out.
Certainly, and then we're doing it for just our community versus what I think Michael Conant and others have shown, their various studies that they've illustrated, that they're doing these studies in other places, and we're not all that different from anywhere else, right? With 0.7, or when it used to be just not that long ago, 1.0 or 1.2 was the recommended dosage, right? So, those things changed. What the CDC once recommended, they realized that's not right, and things all change, right? So, as I said to the village board, it's often stated in a variety of things that science is settled, but
It isn't.
the definition of science is it's never settled. There's always new things to be discovered and figured out.
That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Mackenzie, I think I saw your hand.
There we go. Have there been any incidents with your teams? You mentioned the smoking incident in one of the well houses. Have there been other instances where your staff has been harmed by this?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, that was the one instance where we mixed the two chemicals. I believe it's only happened once.
We really are
Safety.
require safety is a primary component, right? So they have to wear the protective garments when they're in there. They want to as well. They know how bad it is. I mean, when you look at the floor where the fluoride will accidentally leach out and drip and it eats through cement, you're going to put the plastic gloves and the plastic aprons and the eyeglasses and the things that are needed on to be safe.
And then I guess a clarifying question, area of concern is back to the Delta Dental, the fund and the grant. It sounds like we're just not sure if we qualify or not. That's just an unknown at this point,
I
correct?
didn't even know about it, so it's nice to know. So if the board suggests that we should go that way, I would certainly put in for a grant request. I mean, anything we can do I'm a proponent of getting grants. I'll get them for roads and anywhere else. So that's not, if I had known it was there, that's certainly something we'll do when we get to that point.
Yeah, you've done a great job with the grants that you've suggested and have obtained over the years too. So I believe you in that. It's just one of the things that you're recommending is fiscal responsibility. And that seems, that could alleviate some of that concern as well too. Just a point.
Thank you. Anything else, Mackenzie? Anybody else from the committee? We do have a recommendation from staff for discontinuing. Is there anybody willing to make a motion or continue this?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board from the Public Services Committee that we discontinue the fluoridation of our water system, using up the supplies on hand and discontinuing in the future.
Thank you. That's a motion from Bill. Is there a second? Seconded by Dawn. Further discussion? Seeing no discussion, I guess I would like a roll call vote.
That's what I was going to ask. All right. Dawn Clemens,
I guess, sorry, Don, to interrupt, just I want to clarify what we're voting for. So the motion on the floor is for discontinuing the fluoride use, making that recommendation to the village board. So a yes vote or an aye vote is for discontinuing. A no vote or a nay would be a vote for I guess, continuing against the motion.
Aye.
Bill Landgraf,
Aye.
Mike McHugh,
Aye.
Mackenzie Lucius,
No.
Matt Hayden, Eric Larson,
Aye.
Jim Simpson.
Aye.
It passes,
Motions.
yeah, 5-2.
5-2. Thank you all for a very nice discussion and debate. So that sorry to continue, but that recommendation will go to the village board. Did any of you happen to look up when that date is?
It's January 21st.
January 21st. The board meeting is typically at 6 o'clock, but I would suggest checking as it gets closer. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for letting him speak tonight. Have a good evening.
Mackenzie?
Jim, I know if this is my opportunity's gone, I know we talked about in our previous meeting that giving some type of public notice if this does pass about discontinuation. I think that was part of the conversation last time too. And if I missed the boat, my apologies.
We'll certainly do that. It'll be on Engage to Forest, and this information will be shared throughout the public if that is the way we do it.
Yep, thank you. So the last point to discuss is discussion and recommendation on our 2025 public services meeting dates. Reese, maybe?
It can be all of us, but I'm happy to lead it. So as we're getting into 2025, hard to believe that's what we're saying, but it's only a few days away here. So we're just looking ahead at our meetings for next year. And again, our first 2 meeting months are going to be impacted. The first one with MLK, and as Judd mentioned, we are not in the office on that Monday. So I provided 2 options. Option 1 would be to move it to the 20th, move it to the 27th, which is the following Monday. We would have to conduct that via Zoom just because there would be court that's being held in here. And then option 2 would be we could move it to that Thursday. We could have that Thursday in person here in the room, and I've tentatively blocked it off just if the committee decides to go that direction. And then the second month in February, from talking with Callie, she says that she feels fairly confident that there's going to be a primary election, which would be the day after our public service meeting. And so they would have the election equipment already set up in the room. So we have the option to have the meeting on the same day, but it would have to be conducted via Zoom. We can move it to that Thursday again, and it would be able to be in person, and I have that blocked off, or we could move it to the following Monday. And again, it would have to be conducted via Zoom due to court. So looking at the rest of the months, it didn't seem like we would have any other things that would impact. I know that there was maybe a request for us to reconsider our date for December so court could happen, but I blocked the room first, so we give first priority.
I'm good with either one of the options. I prefer the in-person meeting, but if people have conflicts having it on Thursday, I can always do Zoom. I'm leaning more towards moving the dates to have it in person.
Can I ask Reese, because at least this January one is real soon, do we know what might be on the agenda?
Nothing
assume
that
no.
we know of. So anything that would come up between now and then would be what's on the agenda. We don't have anything pre-planned at this point.
Cancel.
That's what I was wondering, if it ends up being canceled. I personally have a conflict on the 23rd, but it doesn't need to be. Bill is more than willing to lead that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope that it's canceled.
So could we maybe, sorry, step out of order, do we just maybe show of hands of what options work, or if anybody has any discussions, please state. Okay, so Matt, yep.
I can make everything work except for February 20th, so anything else works.
And me, I'll be gone the last part of February, out of state.
Okay, so let's maybe show of hands. So this is the January 20th, 25, the option 1. If you can make that work, please raise your hand. Yep, option 1 is moved to the 27th. That was Zoom only. And if you can make option 2 work, the Thursday, the 23rd, please raise your hand. Okay. Is that enough of an answer for you?
I think you guys just need to let us, we're fine with doing whatever. I mean, it sounds like everyone would be able to make it via Zoom on the 27th. So if we want to do it via Zoom and then everyone can attend, we'll do that one as the 27th.
Okay. And on February, option 1 is moved to February 24th on Zoom. If you're able to, please raise your hand. Yeah, move to February 20th, that's a Thursday, and that would be an in-person. If you can make that one, please raise your hand. Well, that one I want to question because it is also what the village board is talking about doing. Yeah.
I think we lose that battle, so.
So I would say option 2. So option 3, meet on Zoom on February 17th. If that works, please raise your hand. So
Yeah, so it looks
it
like,
looks like we're doing Zoom regardless.
yep, let me see, because the 17th, I think, is our actual meeting date.
Yeah, so I think I would lean towards just keeping the actual date since we're on Zoom.
So then we'll, yep, we'll
That's
do.
if they have a primary though.
Yeah.
We'll
Kelly
know
felt,
by like the second week in January.
we should know by the second week of January, but she felt fairly confident that she said she was planning for one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay.
Because she said there's a,
Yeah, Supreme Court and
Yep.
Department of Instruction. Could be kind of primary heavy, yeah.
Sounds like the February, we'll keep it on the date. It would just have to be Zoom.
it's the 17th.
February 17th, the normal date. There's a slight chance that it will be in person, but likely Zoom. Is that actionable item or that was just for,
I was looking, I think we would want action on it just so that.
still looks like you're
I'll
ready?
make a motion to accept these date changes as voted, or the straw poll majority suggested.
I'll get it written down.
Is there a second to Bill's motion? Thank you, Eric. And Reese, I'm assuming you'll clarify with an email to all of us what days we just chose?
Yep, I'll send out an email to everybody.
Thank you.
Just to point out, we do have St. Patrick's Day down here, so I think we should celebrate on that day.
Wear green.
Green, on the floor.
Let's post a public meeting after this meeting at whatever local tavern. Yeah. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8.1, public services update.
Pepsi Way was paved with the binder down, so that road will be open for construction purposes. Quick Trip is moving along, if you've not noticed down there. There's a lot of things happening.
There's a new Quick Trip going?
Distribution center,
Oh,
the big distribution center in Pepsi Way that's going on the old Zaire property back by Camper World.
oh, Okay.
Pepsi Way extends there for them. So that was paved and done. Northtown Road should be open here relatively soon. The MG&E has got their last bits that they're doing with placing their gas lines in there, but it's striped or paved and has signage up and all that. So that road, you'll have a through connection if you wanted to get down from, well, you could take Northtown Road all the way from Highway V all the way down to 19 here very soon. So
Yeah, hopefully, I talked to the contractor today. They're hoping Thursday or Friday. Genie pulled out today and they just have some restoration work they want to get done before we open the road.
other than that, I think, we did get some free fill for the athletic complex. So the westernmost long field area that was really a sunken pit has been brought up. And we've got some topsoil going in there. So we'll have an additional space there for practices. So the youth football isn't necessarily tearing up the field itself that they play on. They could practice on something else, and it gives us more space for additional youth soccer fields and or flag football fields. So it's pretty nice to get that.
I got two quick questions. How long is my road on Larkspur going to be under construction at 7 o'clock in the morning?
They're going as fast as possible to get that connection built through there. I don't have a, Greg, do you know it?
They said about 3 weeks for utility work, and then I'm gonna guess they'll be done for the year once they get the utilities in, because the ground will be frozen.
They're not gonna
solid
pave
pretty
it
soon.
or do the curb and gutter until the spring.
12 neighbors ask me, I'm like, I'll find out. So it's just 6:58 every morning and
Sure.
the other question real quick, and I was hoping you'd know, there's a new building down by the Quick Trip past the elementary school where the roundabout is. It's big and white. What is that?
Yeah, here in DeForest or down on Windsor
Village of
Road?
Windsor.
I should say.
That's a new restaurant that's opening, a supper club. I forget the name of it, but it's the O'Malley's, the Jet Room. He owns the Jet Room. He's opening another one there. So
I heard it was called the Windsor.
well, it's called the Windsor, as most things are. Sorry, one other thing, we did start the deer cull last week. We had 7 deer harvested and 7 deer were picked up within 24 hours. So that will go on through March. Yep, down that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Judd. Recommendation or recreation and community enrichment update.
Yeah, so we had a couple events at the beginning of December. So we had our holiday tree lighting and it was very cold. But we did have good attendance even with the weather. I was definitely standing there for a moment going, I don't know, should we be doing this right now? But thankfully a lot of people came out. We had a really awesome Santa then we also had our largest amount of tree walk sponsors. So there's also, if you haven't participated already, we're doing the Merry and Bright boat. So you can walk through the park if it's warm enough and you dare brave it. Or there's also pictures online as well that you can vote. And we are gonna have little awards for the different category winners. We had the candlelight hike that Friday then, weather was much nicer, but another good event. And we get really great community volunteers. I feel like sometimes I forget to mention them, but like the Girl Scouts, they get together and they go through all of our candles and make sure that the candles are set for the hike and redivide them in all the bins. And the Cub Scouts this year put together all of the s'more packets for us. And then they also put out all the candles the night of and clean them all up for us. So we're really lucky to have some really great partners in the community that help make that event really nice. And this year Beans and Cream was our presenting sponsor, and they actually provided all of the hot chocolate. So us as staff are kind of sitting there like, this is running so smoothly, we don't really have anything to do, which is a rare situation. That's not always like on Wednesday where we were all running around trying to figure out like, who has a shovel? Who's holding the table down so the speaker doesn't fly away? So it was pretty nice. But and then one other thing to note, just as it's coming up, is We're going to be doing some site maintenance on our registration and facility reservation site on December 31st. So when we get into the office that day, we're actually going to close all in-person and online registration through the rest of the 31st. And we'll open it back up at 12:01 on the 1st. Basically, there's just some stuff on the back end that we have to do. And it's the easiest way to do it to make sure that it's the less amount of headaches for everybody else. So we'll be doing some announcements. It'll be in the newsletter going out. We'll have it on social media. There'll also be a banner that will go on the site. So when they log into that site, there'll be a banner saying that it's closed for maintenance. And it'll be back up on the 1st, so.
Thank you, Reese. 8.3, natural resources update.
As we continue with our restoration work in the prairies and wooded areas, we've got Quercus out there cutting brush and burning along the trails and off in the marsh grasses. So if you do see any plumes of smoke, it's controlled, and they're typically out there working, and they do a really good job at raking around it. So, you know, when they do leave for the night, it's smoldering, but it is safe. They leave it a safe distance. Judd and I have been working with Stan Tech on our stream bank restoration project, continuing to get grants, and then just met with them about getting our bids out. We're shooting for February, March, hopefully to get our bids out for that project. And we're meeting with the DNR this week to talk about wetland, if we need to do any wetland delineations, which could push off our bidding if we have to do wetland delineations to May, June. So continuing to work on that, and hopefully we can get these projects started.
Thank you. My curiosity, how far along are the plans? Do we know if we're doing like the root balls, or are we just taking slopes back, or?
So that's still work in progress. We did tell them that we want something here probably in January to present to you guys with the canoe launches, and there will be root balls going in on the, so we'll share more data here in January. So.
Real good, thank you. So we do have something to talk about in January.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can
do in
always
February
push it to
too.
February. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Greg?
I don't think so.
So item number 9, any other businesses that lawfully comes before the Public Service Committee? I guess the one thing I will say is thank you for hanging in during this meeting. I think it was important to hear what was stated. I know the presentation went long and a number of people's opinions that I've already heard, but I think it was important to hear that mainly as a counterpoint to what was presented to the village board. So I think if you spend the time to look at the village board, I think it was real good. Thank you.
If I could say one thing, because this has come up at my college in the last few weeks. We're running into the same thing everybody else is. One side will say one thing, one side will say the other. And I saw that tonight in all of its glory with the lawyer and with the doctors, and everyone was battling it. The problem is we do have to look at stuff ourselves. We do have to ascertain it, but we also have to rely on them. One important thing that I thought that was important that the lawyer said was the law stated X and no one else could back it up. And I think that was the thing that made it for me. And I think we just all have to, sometimes we have to sit through this stuff and hear everything, because if we don't, we're never going to get to the bottom of it. That's all.
Thank you. And I think we've talked about it without talking about it. So we just got to be careful because we're not on that agenda item, but thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn by Bill and Mike. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned at 7:50. Thank you.